Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's video will be the start of a new series, Horror News Roundup, in which I casually discuss the week's horror news. This series will be released every Thursday. I'll be filming on Wednesday, which explains if I missed some big piece of news. So with that being said, let's talk horror news. So first off is the Scream 7 casting news, which has been a pretty big bombshell. Matthew Lillard has been officially confirmed to return to the film. Of course, he was presumed dead after the first one in which a TV gets smashed into his face, though he did have that small little cameo in Scream 2, which has created fan theories that have lingered for years about his eventual return. We also had the news that Scott Foley will be joining the cast after his presumed death in Scream 3. There are several ways that I could see and that have been discussed about them returning these characters. Several of them are very stupid, some of them are interesting, or there could be a whole different approach that nobody's really thinking about. But I do have faith in Kevin Williamson to be able to approach this in a way that's interesting and not cliched or stupid. Williamson is of course returning after all the drama that's been swirling around this movie for a number of years. It seems that they're trying to bring all these people back in an effort to get the fans excited again. I think it is working. It definitely seems to be a good strategy. This seems to be a strategy in a lot of big series, right? Legacy sequels, things like that. Just bring back everybody that everybody loved, and there we go, right? But I think this one has the potential to maybe subvert that in a way, just because I think Kevin Williamson is a genius and he's a great writer. I know it's not his screenplay, but I think he'll probably make some changes, I would assume, to whatever the original story is, especially with all these new casting decisions having to be made. So it'll be interesting. I will see the movie just out of curiosity, if anything else, and also because I'm a huge Kevin Williamson fan. I'm a huge fan of those original Scream films that him and Craven made. I think they really subverted the genre in a smart way, in a clever way that none of the other postmodern, pastiche films could really accomplish. So yeah, I'm excited for Scream 7. This news is intriguing because, hey, I love Matthew Lillard. Who doesn't? The Scott Foley news makes it like, okay, what's going on? Why is there so many people returning? So we'll see what happens. Next, I want to talk about David Cronenberg's The Shrouds, which got a release date and a small little teaser. It's coming out this spring in April, so I'm excited about that. I'm a huge Cronenberg fan. I absolutely adore Crimes of the Future. I made a tier list of his work because I love his work so much. I've seen all of his movies, and I'll definitely be tracking this one down and seeing theaters if I can. I saw Crimes of the Future in theaters, and that was the very first Cronenberg I ever got to see in the theaters, which was a really special moment for me. This seems like an intriguing movie for sure. The Shrouds has obviously been bouncing around for years. I believe it started off as like a mini-series for Netflix. But now that we're going to get it as a film in theaters, I'm definitely hyped about that. So yeah, long live the new Flesh. Next up is Takashi Miike's Audition getting a remake from Focus Features. Now, Christian Taftrup, who directed the original Danish version of Speak No Evil, is going to be co-writing the film with his brother. And look, I'm a huge fan of that original film. I'm a huge fan of Takashi Miike. I think obviously he was a huge part of the J-horror boom, and not only that, but just in general, he has always made some really interesting movies regardless of what genre he's working within. He's obviously like a workman-like director. He's made over 100 feature films. He's an insane work ethic, but it's also indicative of the faster pace of the Japanese film industry, which I always admire. In America, it takes a decade to make movies. In Japan, they just pump them out so quickly. Boom, 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 one after the other, and I love that. Now, Audition in particular is definitely a beloved classic, and a lot of people are like, no, don't touch it. I am not someone who's averse to remakes. If you want to remake it, go ahead. Hopefully you have an interesting angle to really make it fresh and new and exciting. And I love Audition. I think that the commentary that's in it is definitely still fresh here in 2025, unfortunately. It's interesting as well that this will be another Western remake of a Japanese horror film, something we haven't had really in over a decade and a half. That era has been long gone. So that is intriguing as well. And it is technically an adaptation, a new adaptation of Ryu Murakami's original novel from 1997. Ryu Murakami, I think, is an amazing horror novelist. If you're looking for horror novels to read, I definitely recommend his work. So I'm looking forward to this film. Next up in horror news is another remake. The Faculty will be getting a remake at Miramax. Now this is, of course, very much of its era, right? A 90s horror film. And it does seem like that style is kind of getting back in vogue a little bit, especially with the return of all these slasher movies that kind of do have a little bit of a 90s vibe at times. Now look, hopefully this means that we're going to be getting an early 2000s aesthetic soon, because a lot of Gen Z are now becoming adults, and they're going to have their early 2000s nostalgia being reflected into the culture. So maybe we'll be seeing splatter horror films make a return, which I would absolutely love. I know everybody has their nostalgic periods, and that's why they just keep getting a return of those eras. That's why horror is so cyclical. Right now, it's maybe the 90s stuff and some other things. There's still a lot of nostalgia for the 70s and 80s being reflected within horror right now in the mainstream. I think eventually we'll start getting the 2000s stuff. So I definitely am anticipating splatter horror returning in a big way in the next decade at least. See, I don't really have a lot to say about The Faculty getting a remake. It's another Kevin Williamson movie that is surviving into the 2020s, so that's intriguing. He's definitely having a bit of a moment right now. He's definitely somebody that I really respect their work. I'm a big fan of his work, and I love the horror movies that he did in the 90s, even though I'm not a big fan of that particular era in general, but I think he was the best of it. He was the smartest of those meta, self-aware horror films. Next, I want to talk about Final Destination Bloodlines getting a teaser. It's the newest film in the Final Destination franchise. It's been a while since we've gotten one. It's, of course, a very strong series with big moments, right, that really have a strong visceral impact, a big impact on the culture, especially Final Destination 2. You think about it, the big log truck and that whole thing, that's been seared into so many people's brains at this point. You constantly hear people referencing that opening. They maybe don't even know what movie it's from necessarily, but they just have this like unsettling feeling when they're in behind a big log truck like that or something like that. So Final Destination, it's always been a kind of goofy, silly, stupid horror movie thing that's just fun. It has really cool like Rube Goldberg kind of things in a similar way to Saw. There is a lot of similarities in that, but obviously a more supernatural bent to this. Now, the teaser itself was just showing one kill, and hopefully it's one of the less ambitious ones. It is kind of cool and well executed. I don't think it really shows too much about the movie. I mean, I wasn't like blown away or anything, but I'll definitely go and see it in the theaters. I'm excited. I like these movies, like I said, and it's interesting that these ones have lasted since like 2000, I believe was the first one. So that's been lasting a long time, and this is, we'll see if it becomes now a resurgence in a similar way to Saw, right? Saw had a break, and then it came back with Saw X, and then that was supposed to kickstart a bunch of movies, but of course there's so many behind-the-scenes things going on that's holding those films up. But we'll see if Final Destination now gets a resurgence and they get a couple more movies out of this. We'll see. I think it'll probably do pretty well at the box office, but I'll definitely be watching it in the theaters. Next up, I believe this was during the Grammys, we had a Megan 2.0 teaser. Now, the teaser itself doesn't really show anything. It just kind of shows Megan and whatever. And just the idea is that she's back and this movie's coming out. And look, I thought the original was a pretty fun, stupid, goofy kind of movie, right? It's a fun little movie. It's a good Blumhouse movie. Of course, Megan became very iconic and became a bit of a cultural icon in certain sectors of the internet. The sequel is supposedly, I mean, there was a synopsis dropping. It seems like a Terminator 2 sort of style. They're going with the plot. And of course, if this is another big film, this would be another huge hit from Blumhouse to have another big franchise. Of course, James Wan is also involved. Those two have been consistently having great years, year after year after year. And even though there's a lot of crap that gets produced out of Blumhouse, a lot of these iconic things do get brought up to the top and they continue to have major cultural impact. So it's going to be interesting to see how Megan 2.0 does. I think it'll definitely do well at the box office would be my guess, but we'll see what happens. Of course, Blumhouse is going to keep the budget relatively constrained, so it doesn't have to do that overwhelming. It's not like an MCU film or whatever, or a DC film where they need to make like $1 billion just to make their money back. Next up is Silent Hill news. So it's been announced that Silent Hill 2, the remake, has sold over 2 million copies since launch. Now this is obviously great news for Bloober Team and Konami. They did a great job with this game. I think Bloober Team really blew away everybody's expectations. And look, I absolutely love the game. I think it's awesome. I'm a big fan of the original. I think this was an excellent remake. And I think most people agree with me. It has an overwhelmingly positive response from critics and fans alike. And hopefully this is a good sign for the rest of the franchise, these sales numbers. Hopefully this allows for a full rebirth of Silent Hill. Of course, Silent Hill F looks very intriguing. I'm intrigued by Return to Silent Hill, which Christoph Gahn is coming back to direct. I'm a big fan of that original film. I'm not a big fan of Silent Hill Revelation, but I think that Return to Silent Hill, it seemed intriguing. The trailer kind of seemed like it had some promise to it. Then they seemed to like remove it from the internet, or at least YouTube, and now we haven't heard anything. So hopefully with the sales numbers, it sort of brings that movie back up to the forefront. We get some hype building for that, because I'm really looking forward to it. But regardless, I'm glad that this game has sold a lot of copies, because I think that Bloober Team did an excellent job with it. It allows this story to be told to more people, and maybe more people then want to go back and play that amazing masterpiece of an original game. Now that's all for this week's Horror News Roundup. Don't forget to come back to this channel tomorrow, as I'll have a new video review dropping of Grafted, the 2025 Shudder horror movie. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and thank you again so much for watching.